Part 6, A New Dawn. Chapter 51, A Hard-Won Victory. In the aftermath of the grueling conflict, the air was thick with a mixture of triumph and sorrow, casting a somber hue over the once tumultuous battlefield. The land, now quiet and still, bore the scars of the fierce combat that had unfolded. The echoes of battle, once a cacophony of chaos, had faded into a mournful silence. The air was heavy with the weight of what had transpired, a silence occasionally broken by the distant sounds of mourning, a poignant reminder of the human cost of their struggle. The victory they had achieved was hard-won, a testament to the immense effort and sacrifice poured into the conflict. Every strategic maneuver, every rallying cry, and every drop of sweat had culminated in this moment of triumph. Yet, the victory was not merely a moment of glory. It was a reflection of the intense struggle that had led to this point. The battlefield, now strewn with remnants of the clash, shattered weapons, tattered banners, and the scattered debris of war, was a stark reminder of the sacrifices made and the battles fought. The battlefield, once a theater of relentless combat, now lay silent save for the low hum of recovering soldiers and the occasional distant cry. The contrast between the chaos of battle and the eerie calm of its aftermath was striking. Where once there had been the clamor of steel and the shouts of combatants, there was now only the subdued noise of a landscape in recovery. The soldiers, many of whom were tending to their own wounds or assisting their comrades, moved with a sense of weary resignation, their faces etched with the exhaustion of prolonged conflict. Every inch of ground had been fiercely contested, each footstep hard-won amidst the struggle. The terrain was marked by the intense battle that had taken place, with scars on the earth reflecting the fierce determination of both sides. The once pristine fields and roads were now marred by the evidence of conflict, craters, trenches, and the remnants of fortifications. The sheer extent of the destruction was a testament to the scale of the confrontation and the relentless nature of the fight. The cost of their success was evident in the heavy toll it had taken on both their forces and their spirits. The soldiers, though victorious, bore the marks of their ordeal, bruised, battered, and emotionally spent. Their faces, grim and weary, reflected the toll of countless hours of combat and the strain of watching their comrades fall. The weight of their victory was not solely in the accolades of success, but in the profound sense of loss and sacrifice that accompanied it. The weight of the victory was further tempered by the stark reality of the losses they had endured. The toll was not only measured in the lives lost but also in the deep emotional scars carried by the survivors. The once vibrant ranks of their forces were now diminished, their numbers reduced by the harsh reality of battle. Each fallen comrade was a reminder of the personal sacrifices made and the cost of their hard-won success. The sense of victory was intertwined with a profound grief, making the triumph bittersweet. As the first rays of dawn broke over the battlefield, casting a soft light on the devastation, the reality of their situation became clearer. The victory they had achieved was undeniably significant, but it came at a cost that demanded reflection and healing. The path forward would require not only the reconstruction of their lands but also the reconciliation of their spirits and the acknowledgement of the sacrifices made. The journey ahead would be marked by the effort to honor the fallen, heal the wounded, and rebuild a future shaped by the lessons learned from the cost of their hard-won victory. The cost of their triumph extended far beyond the immediate tally of lives lost. It was etched deeply into the lives of the survivors, whose every step was marked by the weight of their ordeal. The battlefield, now a somber landscape of victory, bore the indelible marks of the sacrifices made. The victors, although relieved to have achieved their goal, were grappling with the profound impact of their experience. The triumph was tainted by a pervasive sense of sorrow that clung to them like a shadow, a stark reminder of the human cost of their success. Wounded and weary, the victors cast somber glances at the silent reminders of their comrades who had paid the ultimate price. Each fallen soldier was a poignant symbol of the high cost of their struggle. The sight of lifeless bodies strewn across the battlefield served as a constant, heartbreaking reminder of the friends and allies they had lost. The grief they felt was not just for the individuals but also for the shared dreams and hopes that had been extinguished alongside them. The weight of their loss was a burden they carried with heavy hearts. Every casualty served as a stark reminder of the sacrifices made and the heavy price of their success. The faces of the fallen were etched into the memories of those who remained, each one a testament to the cost of their hard-fought victory. The once clear sense of achievement was now clouded by the profound realization that every victory had come at a significant personal and collective expense. The victors were left to grapple with the paradox of celebrating their success while mourning the high price at which it had been bought. The once gleaming banners of victory, symbols of their hard-fought success, now seemed muted against the backdrop of loss and mourning. What had once been vibrant emblems of triumph were overshadowed by the somber task of honoring those who had fallen. The celebratory air of victory was now tinged with a deep sense of solemnity, as the focus shifted from revelry to remembrance. The banners, once symbols of their collective achievement, were now reminders of the sacrifices that had paved the way for their success. The emotional and physical scars borne by the survivors were a testament to the harsh reality of war. The battlefield had not only left its mark on the land but also on the people who had fought there. Wounds, both visible and hidden, spoke of the brutal toll of combat. The physical injuries were accompanied by deep emotional wounds, manifesting in the haunted looks and strained expressions of those who had witnessed the horrors of war. The scars were a daily reminder of the battle's true cost. The need for reconciliation was palpable as the victors confronted the aftermath of their struggle. The process of healing extended beyond the physical reconstruction of their lands. It encompassed the emotional and psychological repair of their communities. The survivors faced the daunting task of mending fractured relationships, addressing lingering resentments, and finding a path forward amidst the wreckage of their shared experience. The road to reconciliation was fraught with challenges, but it was essential for restoring a sense of unity and purpose. In the quiet moments following the battle, as the first light of dawn began to break over the scarred landscape, the true work of reconciliation and healing began. The victors understood that their journey was far from over. The triumph, though hard-earned, was accompanied by a deep responsibility to honor the fallen and rebuild not just their kingdoms, but their lives. The path ahead was one of reflection, remembrance, and renewal, as they sought to reconcile their victory with the profound cost it had incurred. Reconciliation, in the aftermath of their victory, was not merely an emotional necessity but also a practical imperative. The weight of their triumph was tempered by the realization that the war had left more than physical scars. It had deeply fractured relationships and sowed seeds of mistrust that now threatened the stability of their societies. The victorious leaders were acutely aware that addressing these rifts was essential not only for healing but also for the practical task of rebuilding their fractured world. The path to a stable and prosperous future required more than just addressing the immediate needs of recovery. It demanded a comprehensive effort to mend the deep-seated divisions that had emerged during the conflict. The conflict had exposed and exacerbated existing tensions, both within their ranks and among their allies. The alliances that had once seemed strong were now tested by the strains of war, with lingering mistrust and unresolved grievances threatening to unravel the fragile unity. The victors faced the daunting challenge of repairing these relationships, understanding that the success of their efforts would be measured not just by the reconstruction of physical structures but by the restoration of social cohesion. The task was complex, requiring careful diplomacy and a genuine commitment to addressing the root causes of the divisions that had emerged. Healing the rifts among their own ranks and with their allies was crucial for rebuilding their society. The leaders understood that the process of reconciliation involved more than just symbolic gestures. It required substantive actions that addressed the concerns and grievances of all parties involved. Efforts to mend these relationships were grounded in a recognition of the shared experiences and sacrifices that had bound them together in the first place. By acknowledging and addressing the underlying issues, the leaders aimed to foster a sense of mutual understanding and respect, which was essential for moving forward as a unified front. The leaders, burdened with the responsibility of forging peace, initiated dialogues to mend the divisions that had emerged. These dialogues were not merely formalities, but deeply engaged discussions that sought to bridge the gaps created by the conflict. The leaders brought together representatives from various factions, including former adversaries, to participate in these conversations. The goal was to create a platform for open and honest communication, where concerns could be aired and solutions could be sought collaboratively. The process was often fraught with tension and difficulty, but it was essential for laying the groundwork for lasting peace. Their efforts were aimed at creating a unified front, essential for the stability and future prosperity of their realms. The leaders recognized that true reconciliation required more than just ending hostilities. It necessitated the rebuilding of trust and cooperation among all parties. By fostering an environment where collaboration was prioritized over division, they aimed to establish a foundation for a more stable and harmonious society. This approach was not only a strategic necessity but also a moral imperative, reflecting a commitment to ensuring that the hard-won victory led to a sustainable and inclusive future. As the dialogues progressed, tangible steps were taken to address the practical aspects of reconciliation. Joint committees were established to oversee the implementation of agreements, and initiatives were launched to promote community engagement and understanding. These measures were designed to reinforce the commitment to unity and to demonstrate that the process of healing was ongoing and genuine. The leaders worked to create opportunities for shared experiences and collaborative projects, helping to rebuild relationships and foster a sense of collective purpose. In the end, the process of reconciliation was a testament to the resilience and determination of the victors. The challenges they faced were significant, but their commitment to addressing the divisions and mistrust that had emerged during the conflict was a crucial step towards achieving lasting peace. By focusing on both emotional and practical aspects of reconciliation, they laid the foundation for a future where their societies could rebuild and thrive, united by the lessons learned from their shared journey and the commitment to a better, more cohesive world. Recovery from the conflict proved to be an arduous process, one that extended far beyond the immediate aftermath of the battlefield. The once thriving towns and villages, vibrant with life and activity, now lay in a state of disarray. Buildings that had stood as symbols of community and progress were reduced to rubble, and infrastructure essential to daily life had been devastated by the relentless violence. The once familiar streets were now unrecognizable, scarred by the upheaval and destruction wrought by the conflict. The survivors, grappling with the enormity of the devastation, faced the daunting task of rebuilding their homes and lives amidst the remnants of destruction. Each day was a struggle to navigate through the ruins of what had once been their neighborhoods. The process of clearing debris, salvaging what remained, and reconstructing homes was a laborious and emotionally taxing endeavor. Families returned to find their dwellings in ruins, their belongings scattered, and their lives upended, forcing them to confront the reality of starting anew amidst the chaos. Resources, already stretched thin during the conflict, were now scarce, adding another layer of difficulty to the recovery efforts. The infrastructure needed to support the rebuilding process was in disrepair, and essential supplies were limited. The survivors faced not only the challenge of physical reconstruction, but also the practical hurdles of obtaining materials and tools. The scarcity of resources meant that recovery efforts had to be prioritized, with communities working together to allocate what little they had to the most pressing needs. The emotional toll on the population was considerable, as the psychological scars of the conflict were as profound as the physical damage. The loss of homes, the displacement of families, and the trauma of witnessing the destruction took a significant toll on the mental well-being of the survivors. The process of healing from these emotional wounds was an essential part of recovery, requiring support systems and counseling to help individuals cope with their experiences and find hope amidst the despair. Recovery efforts demanded a concerted and sustained effort from all corners of society. Rebuilding a community from the ground up required the collective will and cooperation of individuals, organizations, and leaders. Volunteers and aid workers joined forces with local residents, each contributing their skills and resources to the massive task at hand. The spirit of collaboration became a driving force, as people from different backgrounds and experiences came together to address the challenges of reconstruction. The resilience of the survivors was tested as they worked tirelessly to overcome the obstacles before them. The road to recovery was fraught with setbacks and difficulties, but the determination to rebuild and restore their lives drove the community forward. Each small victory in the reconstruction process, a repaired home, a reopened school, a restored marketplace, served as a symbol of hope and progress, reinforcing the belief that recovery was possible despite the enormity of the task. As the months and years passed, signs of renewal began to emerge. The once devastated towns and villages slowly transformed as new buildings rose from the rubble, infrastructure was repaired, and daily life gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. The recovery process, though slow and fraught with challenges, bore witness to the enduring strength and solidarity of the survivors. The scars of the conflict remained, but they were now interwoven with a narrative of resilience and rebirth, marking the beginning of a new chapter for the communities that had weathered the storm. In the midst of the daunting challenges of recovery, the hard-won victory began to take on a new, profound meaning. What had once been viewed as a simple success over the enemy gradually transformed into something far more significant. It was no longer merely a symbol of triumph in battle, but a catalyst for deep and lasting transformation within the society. The victory served as a turning point, marking the beginning of a journey that went beyond the battlefield and into the hearts and minds of the survivors. It became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the strength of those who had endured the conflict and emerged on the other side with a renewed sense of purpose. As the survivors worked together to rebuild their shattered communities, the struggle they had endured forged a new understanding among them. The hardships of war had revealed the true value of unity and perseverance, qualities that were now essential in the process of reconstruction. The shared experiences of loss and sacrifice created a bond among the people, uniting them in their efforts to restore their society. This newfound understanding transcended previous divisions, fostering a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect that had been absent before the conflict. The people began to realize that their strength lay not only in their individual efforts, but in their ability to come together as one. The rebuilding process became a living embodiment of the lessons learned during the struggle. Every brick laid, every road repaired, and every life restored was a reflection of the collective determination to rise above the devastation. The challenges that once seemed insurmountable were now approached with a sense of shared responsibility and optimism. The people understood that the sacrifices made during the conflict were not in vain. They had paved the way for a stronger, more resilient society. This realization brought a growing sense of hope that, despite the cost, the victory would ultimately lead to a brighter future. As they worked towards rebuilding and reconciling, the survivors began to see the victory as more than just the end of a war. It was the beginning of a new era, one where the values of unity and perseverance would guide them in creating a better society. The process of reconciliation, though difficult, was embraced as an opportunity to heal old wounds and build a foundation of trust and cooperation. The people recognized that true victory lay not only in defeating their enemies, but in overcoming the divisions that had once weakened them. This shift in perspective allowed them to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to ensuring that the sacrifices made would lead to lasting peace. The growing sense of hope was further reinforced by the tangible progress being made in the reconstruction efforts. As the towns and villages slowly regained their former vitality, the people could see the fruits of their labor and the impact of their unity. The success of these efforts became a powerful motivator, inspiring them to continue working towards a future where the lessons of the past would not be forgotten. The victory, though costly, had provided them with the tools and the wisdom needed to build a society that was not only stronger but also more compassionate and inclusive. The costly nature of the victory also served as a reminder of the importance of vigilance in preserving the hard-earned peace. The survivors understood that the sacrifices made during the conflict were a solemn responsibility, one that required them to apply the lessons learned to prevent future conflicts. They became more committed to fostering dialogue, understanding, and cooperation among different factions, knowing that these efforts were crucial in maintaining the stability and cohesion of their society. The victory was not just an end, but a beginning, a foundation upon which a new, more resilient society could be built. In the end, the hard-won victory became a symbol of transformation, resilience, and hope. It marked the turning point where a society once torn apart by conflict began to heal and rebuild, united by the lessons learned and the shared commitment to a better future. The survivors, having endured the trials of war, emerged with a deeper understanding of the value of unity and perseverance. They knew that the sacrifices made had not been in vain. They had laid the groundwork for a society that, though born from the ashes of conflict, would rise stronger, more cohesive, and more capable of facing the challenges of the future. The journey ahead was undoubtedly fraught with difficulty, a path lined with obstacles that would test the resolve of those who had survived the conflict. Yet, within these challenges lay the promise of renewal, a chance to rebuild not only their physical world but also the very fabric of their society. The hard-won victory had opened a new chapter in their history, one that was defined not by the devastation of war but by the determination to overcome its lingering effects. As they looked toward the future, they knew that the road to peace and prosperity would be long and demanding, but they also knew that their collective strength and resolve would carry them forward. This new chapter in their journey was marked by a profound sense of resolve, a determination to confront and conquer the challenges of recovery and reconciliation. The scars of war were deep, both physically and emotionally, but the survivors were united in their commitment to healing. They understood that the process would be arduous, requiring patience, cooperation, and a willingness to face the painful truths of the past. However, this resolve was fueled by the belief that their efforts would lead to a brighter future, one where the horrors of the past would give way to a society rooted in unity and peace. The road to peace was indeed long and demanding, filled with the complexities of rebuilding a world shattered by conflict. The survivors faced countless challenges, from restoring infrastructure and reviving economies to mending broken relationships and addressing the psychological toll of war. Each step forward required careful planning, collaboration, and the unwavering belief that peace was within their reach. The journey was not without setbacks, but each obstacle overcome served as a reminder of their resilience and the progress they had already made. Amidst the trials of post-conflict life, there was a growing sense of hope, a beacon that guided the survivors through the darkest moments of their recovery. This hope was rooted in the shared determination to heal and rebuild, a collective commitment that transcended individual interests and past grievances. The people began to see the fruits of their labor in the small victories of daily life, the reopening of a school, the rebuilding of a marketplace, the restoration of a home. These tangible signs of progress reinforced their belief that a better future was possible, and that their sacrifices had not been in vain. As they navigated the complexities of rebuilding their world, the focus gradually shifted toward creating a future where the fruits of their labor could be enjoyed by all. The survivors recognized that the work of recovery was not just about restoring what had been lost but also about laying the foundation for a new society, one that was more resilient, just, and inclusive. This vision for the future became a driving force behind their efforts, inspiring them to push forward despite the challenges. They knew that the legacy of their struggle would be measured not only by the battles they had won, but by the society they would build in the aftermath. Honoring the legacies of their sacrifices became a central theme in the rebuilding process. The survivors understood that the losses they had endured and the hardships they had faced were not just personal tragedies but collective experiences that had shaped their society. As they worked to create a better future, they sought to ensure that the memories of those who had fallen and the lessons learned from the conflict would be preserved and honored. Monuments were erected, stories were told, and traditions were established to keep the memory of their sacrifices alive and to remind future generations of the cost of peace. In the end, the journey ahead was not just about overcoming challenges but about embracing the opportunity for renewal. The survivors knew that the road to peace would be long and difficult, but they were also filled with the hope that their efforts would lead to a brighter, more cohesive society. The new chapter that had been opened by their hard-won victory was one of healing, rebuilding, and honoring the past while looking toward the future. As they continued on this journey, they carried with them the knowledge that their determination, unity, and perseverance would ultimately lead them to the peace and prosperity they so desperately sought. Chapter 52: Healing the Wounds. In the weeks following the hard-won victory, the once vibrant landscapes were transformed into somber reminders of the recent conflict, now lying under a heavy shroud of silence. Fields that had once been lush with greenery and life were marred by the scars of war, the remnants of battle strewn across the land. Villages that had echoed with the sounds of daily life were now eerily quiet, their streets deserted, and their buildings reduced to ruins. The beauty that had once defined these places was overshadowed by the devastation, and the survivors were left to grapple with the reality of a world forever changed. The echoes of battle had faded into memory, but the work of healing and rebuilding lay ahead, a formidable task that loomed large before the weary victors. The silence that now blanketed the land was a stark contrast to the chaos and noise of war, yet it was filled with an unspoken understanding of the challenges that lay ahead. The survivors, though exhausted, knew that their struggle was far from over. The battle for survival had been won, but the battle to restore their world was just beginning. The path to recovery would require not only physical labor but also emotional resilience, as they confronted the enormity of what had been lost and the daunting task of rebuilding from the ashes. The leaders of the victorious alliance, who had guided their people through the trials of war, now found themselves facing a new and equally challenging responsibility. Though they were weary from the rigors of conflict, they understood that their true test lay not in the battlefield's aftermath, but in the painstaking process of restoration. The victory they had achieved, while significant, was only the first step in a much longer journey. They were now charged with the task of leading their people through the difficult process of healing, reconciliation, and reconstruction, a task that would require all the wisdom, patience, and strength they could muster. Rebuilding their world was not merely a matter of reconstructing physical structures. It required addressing the deep wounds that the conflict had inflicted on their society. The leaders recognized that the scars of war were not only visible in the landscape but also in the hearts and minds of the people. The emotional toll of the conflict was immense, with many grappling with grief, trauma, and the loss of loved ones. The leaders knew that healing these wounds would be essential for the long-term stability of their society. They began by fostering a sense of unity and purpose, encouraging their people to come together in the spirit of cooperation and mutual support. Unity, however, was easier said than achieved. The war had not only pitted them against a common enemy but had also exposed and, in some cases, deepened divisions within their own ranks. Old grievances and suspicions lingered, threatening to undermine the fragile peace that had been won. The leaders understood that true reconciliation would require more than just words. It would demand concrete actions that demonstrated their commitment to a shared future. They initiated dialogues between different factions, seeking to bridge the gaps and rebuild trust. These efforts were met with varying degrees of success, but they were crucial steps in the process of mending the social fabric that had been torn apart by the conflict. As the days turned into weeks, the painstaking work of reconstruction began in earnest. The physical rebuilding of homes, infrastructure, and communities was a monumental task that required the mobilization of all available resources. The leaders worked tirelessly to coordinate these efforts, ensuring that aid was distributed fairly and that the most urgent needs were addressed first. Volunteers from all walks of life stepped forward to contribute, their collective efforts symbolizing the resilience and determination of a people committed to rising from the ruins. Each act of rebuilding, no matter how small, was a step toward restoring the vitality and vibrancy of their world. The emotional healing of the population was an equally important aspect of the recovery process. The leaders understood that without addressing the psychological scars left by the war, any physical reconstruction would be incomplete. They established support systems to help those struggling with the trauma of their experiences, offering counseling and creating spaces for people to share their stories and find solace in the community. These efforts were vital in fostering a sense of hope and renewal, as individuals began to find strength in their shared experiences and the knowledge that they were not alone in their suffering. In the end, the work of healing and rebuilding was not a task that could be completed in a matter of weeks or even months. It was the beginning of a long and ongoing process. The leaders and their people were aware that the road ahead would be difficult and fraught with challenges, but they faced it with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The victory they had achieved on the battlefield had given them the opportunity to rebuild their world, and they were committed to ensuring that the sacrifices made during the conflict would lead to a brighter and more unified future. The silence that had once been filled with despair began to give way to the sounds of rebuilding and renewal, as a society scarred by war took its first tentative steps toward a new beginning. The first steps toward recovery began with the grim task of surveying the damage, a necessary yet heart-wrenching endeavor. What had once been vibrant towns and villages, filled with the sounds of daily life and activity, now lay in ruins. The devastation was overwhelming, with buildings reduced to piles of rubble and fields that had once yielded bountiful harvests now scorched and barren. The once familiar streets, where children had played and merchants had called out their wares, were now strewn with debris, a stark reminder of the war's brutal toll. The sight was enough to weigh heavily on the hearts of all who witnessed it, bringing home the full cost of the conflict they had endured. As they moved through the wreckage, the leaders of the victorious alliance could see the despair etched on the faces of their people. The scale of the destruction was immense, and the challenge of rebuilding seemed almost insurmountable. Yet, amidst this desolation, the leaders understood that they could not afford to be paralyzed by grief. The future of their communities depended on their ability to rally the survivors, to transform their sorrow into action. With this in mind, they began to gather their communities, urging them to come together to face the daunting task ahead. It was a call to unity, to collective effort, and to the resilience that had seen them through the darkest days of the war. The initial response was mixed, as the enormity of the task at hand threatened to overwhelm the survivors. The despair that had taken root in the aftermath of the conflict was palpable, manifesting in the slumped shoulders and downcast eyes of those who had lost so much. The idea of rebuilding from the ashes of what had once been their homes seemed an impossible dream. However, the leaders persisted, knowing that the first step toward recovery was not merely physical but also psychological. They spoke of the need to honor the memories of those who had fallen by ensuring that their sacrifices were not in vain. This message began to resonate, stirring a sense of purpose among the survivors. As the days passed, the call for collective effort and resilience began to take hold. Slowly but surely, the survivors started to respond, driven by a deep-seated determination to rebuild their lives and their communities. Groups of people began to organize, each taking on different aspects of the reconstruction effort. Some focused on clearing debris from the streets, while others began the arduous task of rebuilding homes and public spaces. The fields, though charred and barren, were not abandoned. Instead, they became a symbol of hope and renewal as farmers and volunteers worked together to restore the land to its former fertility. The initial despair, while still present, was gradually being replaced by a sense of resolve. The leaders, seeing this newfound determination, continued to provide guidance and support, helping to coordinate the efforts and ensure that resources were distributed where they were most needed. They understood that the road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, but they also knew that with each small victory, the survivors were reclaiming not just their physical spaces but their sense of identity and community. The act of rebuilding was more than just a practical necessity. It was a way of reaffirming their connection to the land, to each other, and to the values that had sustained them through the conflict. Each new wall erected, each field tilled, was a testament to their resilience and their refusal to be defeated by the destruction that had befallen them. The process of reconstruction also became a time of reflection and reassessment. As they rebuilt, the survivors began to consider not just what had been lost, but what could be gained in the new world they were creating. There was an opportunity here to build something better, to address the flaws and divisions that had contributed to the war in the first place. The leaders encouraged this line of thinking, fostering discussions about the kind of society they wanted to create and the lessons they had learned from the conflict. This dialogue was not always easy, as it often required confronting painful truths, but it was a necessary part of the healing process. The act of rebuilding was, in this sense, both a physical and a moral endeavor. As the reconstruction efforts gained momentum, a sense of hope began to emerge. It was fragile at first, easily overshadowed by the enormity of the task ahead, but it grew stronger with each passing day. The survivors, once gripped by despair, began to find solace in their shared efforts and in the progress they were making, however slow it might be. The sight of a rebuilt home, the first green shoots emerging in a once scorched field, or the laughter of children playing in a cleared street were all signs that life, despite everything, was beginning to return. These moments of joy and connection served as powerful reminders of what they were working toward, not just survival, but a future where their communities could thrive once again. In the end, the first steps toward recovery were not just about rebuilding what had been lost, but about laying the foundation for a new beginning. The leaders and their people knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they also knew that they had the strength and the will to see it through. The destruction of the war had left them with little, but it had also given them an opportunity to rebuild their world on a more solid and just foundation. The journey had only just begun, but with each step forward, they were moving closer to a future defined not by the scars of the past, but by the promise of renewal and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the days passed, the focus of the survivors gradually shifted from the overwhelming task of assessing the damage to actively working toward recovery. The initial shock of seeing their towns and villages in ruins had given way to a determination to rebuild. The leaders, recognizing the urgency of the situation, quickly mobilized teams of builders, engineers, and craftsmen. These individuals were the backbone of the reconstruction effort. bringing with them the skills and knowledge necessary to restore the damaged infrastructure. They worked tirelessly, understanding that their efforts were crucial not just for physical rebuilding, but for the emotional recovery of the people as well. In the heart of each devastated town, the soundscape began to change. Where silence had once reigned, now the clang of hammers and the rumble of machinery filled the air. These sounds, once associated with destruction, had taken on a new meaning. They became symbols of hope and renewal. Each strike of a hammer, each brick laid, was a step toward reclaiming what had been lost. The survivors, who had been living in a state of uncertainty and fear, found comfort in the steady rhythm of construction. It was a tangible sign that life was slowly returning to normal, that the world they had known was not entirely lost. Families that had been scattered and displaced by the conflict began to return to their homes, or at least to what remained of them. For many, the sight of their once familiar surroundings, now altered beyond recognition, was both heartbreaking and motivating. These homes, even in their ruined state, were more than just buildings. They were repositories of memories, of lives lived and loved. The return of these families marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. They rolled up their sleeves, working side by side with their neighbors, friends, and even strangers, united by a common goal: to restore a semblance of normalcy and rebuild their communities from the ground up. The act of rebuilding was not only about restoring physical structures. It was also about mending the social fabric that had been torn apart by war. The sense of community, which had been tested to its limits during the conflict, now emerged as a powerful force for healing. The bonds forged in the fires of conflict, through shared hardship, loss, and perseverance, became the foundation upon which the survivors built their new lives. In working together, they rediscovered a sense of belonging and purpose that had been lost amidst the chaos of war. The collective effort to rebuild was, in itself, a form of healing, as it allowed the survivors to channel their grief and pain into something constructive and hopeful. As the reconstruction efforts gained momentum, the leaders played a crucial role in maintaining morale and ensuring that resources were allocated efficiently. They understood that the process of rebuilding was not just a physical challenge, but also an emotional one. The leaders made it a point to be present in the towns and villages, offering words of encouragement and support. They listened to the concerns and needs of the people, making sure that no one felt forgotten or left behind. This hands-on approach helped to foster a sense of trust and solidarity, further strengthening the community's resolve to see the rebuilding process through to completion. In addition to the physical reconstruction, efforts were made to revive the cultural and social aspects of the communities. Festivals, markets, and communal gatherings that had been suspended during the war were gradually reintroduced, providing much-needed moments of joy and normalcy. These events, though simple, were vital in restoring the rhythm of daily life. They offered the survivors a chance to reconnect with one another, to celebrate their resilience, and to find comfort in the traditions that had sustained them before the war. The revival of these communal activities was a reminder that, despite the destruction, the spirit of the community remained unbroken. As the towns and villages began to take shape once more, there was a growing sense of optimism. The challenges ahead were still immense, but the progress made in such a short time was a testament to the strength and determination of the survivors. Each repaired road, each reconstructed home, was a symbol of their ability to overcome adversity. The community had not only survived the war but was now thriving in the face of its aftermath. This success, however, did not come without reflection. The leaders and their people understood that the process of recovery was ongoing and that the lessons learned from the conflict must guide their future actions. Ultimately, the focus on recovery and rebuilding became a rallying point for the survivors. It allowed them to transform their grief into action, their despair into hope. The physical act of rebuilding was mirrored by an emotional and psychological recovery, as the survivors began to find peace in their shared efforts. The towns and villages, once devastated, were gradually being restored, not just to their former state but to something stronger and more resilient. The sense of community that had emerged from the ashes of war became the cornerstone of this new beginning, ensuring that the scars of the past would not define them, but rather would serve as a reminder of their enduring strength and unity. Reconciliation was an equally critical aspect of the rebuilding process, as the conflict had left behind more than just physical scars. It had also sown deep-seated divisions within and between the various factions. The war had fractured communities, pitting neighbors against each other, and creating rifts that ran deep into the fabric of society. The leaders understood that without addressing these emotional and social wounds, any efforts to rebuild infrastructure would be hollow and incomplete. Recognizing the need for healing, they embarked on a mission to mend these rifts through a series of dialogues and councils aimed at fostering understanding and resolving lingering grievances. These dialogues were not easy. The wounds of war were still fresh, and the memories of betrayal, loss, and suffering were difficult to confront. In the early stages, the gatherings were often tense, with emotions running high as old wounds were reopened. The leaders, however, were resolute in their commitment to reconciliation. They knew that true peace required more than just the cessation of hostilities. It demanded a deep, mutual acknowledgement of the pain that had been caused and a shared willingness to move forward. The leaders took on the role of mediators, guiding the discussions with patience and empathy, ensuring that all voices were heard, and that the process was both inclusive and respectful. The councils were composed of representatives from all the factions involved in the conflict, including those who had been on opposing sides. Bringing these groups together in the same room was in itself a significant achievement, but the real challenge lay in fostering a dialogue that could lead to genuine reconciliation. Each faction had its own grievances and perspectives, shaped by their experiences during the war. The leaders encouraged each group to express their concerns openly, creating a space where past wrongs could be acknowledged without fear of retribution. This openness was crucial in breaking down the barriers of mistrust that had built up over the course of the conflict. As the discussions progressed, the participants began to realize that, despite their differences, they shared common goals: the desire for peace, stability, and the well-being of their communities. This shared vision became a foundation upon which to build mutual respect and cooperation. Slowly, the initial hostility gave way to a more constructive atmosphere, where ideas for moving forward could be exchanged. The leaders facilitated these exchanges, helping to translate grievances into actionable solutions. This process was not without setbacks, as old animosities occasionally resurfaced, but the leaders remained steadfast in their belief that reconciliation was possible. The turning point came when the councils began to focus on shared experiences rather than divisions. Stories of loss, sacrifice, and survival resonated across factional lines, revealing the common humanity that had been obscured by the conflict. These shared experiences became a powerful force for healing, as participants began to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow survivors of a terrible ordeal. The leaders capitalized on this shift, encouraging initiatives that promoted collaboration between the factions. Joint projects, such as rebuilding shared public spaces or restoring community services, became symbols of a new era of cooperation. These efforts helped to rebuild trust, as people who had once been divided by war now worked side by side for the common good. The success of these reconciliation efforts was not solely due to the formal councils and dialogues. Equally important were the informal interactions that took place in the spaces between these meetings. As the atmosphere of tension began to ease, individuals from different factions started to engage with each other outside the formal settings, over shared meals, in communal work projects, or during social gatherings. These interactions, though often understated, were vital in breaking down the barriers that had kept them apart. Through these everyday exchanges, relationships were mended, and the seeds of lasting peace were sown. Despite the progress made, the leaders remained vigilant, knowing that reconciliation was an ongoing process that required continuous effort and commitment. They established mechanisms to monitor and address any emerging tensions, ensuring that the dialogue remained open and that grievances could be addressed before they escalated. They also invested in education and community programs that promoted tolerance, understanding, and cooperation among the younger generation. The leaders understood that for reconciliation to be truly sustainable, it needed to be ingrained in the cultural and social fabric of their society. In the end, the reconciliation efforts proved to be a cornerstone of the broader rebuilding process. The dialogues and councils, though challenging, had paved the way for a new era of cooperation and mutual respect. The physical reconstruction of towns and villages was mirrored by the emotional and social healing that took place within and between the factions. The leaders, through their unwavering commitment to peace and unity, had not only mended the scars of the past but had also laid the foundation for a future where the lessons learned from the conflict could guide them toward a more harmonious and resilient society. The journey toward reconciliation was far from over, but the steps they had taken were a testament to the power of understanding and the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. The emotional toll on the people was immense, leaving scars that ran as deep as the physical destruction around them. Recognizing this, the leaders knew that addressing the psychological and emotional needs of the population was just as crucial as the task of rebuilding infrastructure. They initiated the establishment of support centers across the towns and villages, providing spaces where individuals could seek counseling and assistance in coping with the trauma and loss they had experienced. These centers became a lifeline for many, offering not only professional help but also a sense of community and understanding, where people could share their stories and begin the healing process together. These support centers were staffed by trained counselors, many of whom were volunteers who had themselves survived the conflict. Their empathy and first-hand understanding of the people's pain made them invaluable in helping others navigate their grief. The centers offered a range of services, from individual therapy sessions to group discussions, where survivors could connect with others who had endured similar experiences. For many, just having a safe space to talk about their emotions was a critical step toward recovery. The counselors worked tirelessly to provide comfort and guidance, helping individuals to slowly rebuild their lives, piece by piece, from the emotional ruins left by the war. In addition to the support centers, community gatherings played a pivotal role in addressing the collective grief of the population. These gatherings were more than just meetings. They were opportunities for people to come together, to remind each other that they were not alone in their sorrow. The leaders organized memorial services to honor those who had fallen during the conflict. These services were solemn and deeply moving, with families, friends, and comrades coming together to remember their loved ones. Monuments were erected in central locations, bearing the names of the deceased, ensuring that their sacrifices would not be forgotten. The act of remembering became a communal ritual, binding the survivors together in shared mourning and respect. The memorial services were carefully designed to be inclusive, allowing people from all factions and backgrounds to participate. This inclusivity was essential in fostering reconciliation, as it acknowledged the losses suffered on all sides and emphasized the shared humanity of the people. The services provided a formal space for grieving, where emotions could be openly expressed and where the pain of loss could be collectively acknowledged. The rituals performed, whether through the laying of flowers, the lighting of candles, or the recitation of names, served as acts of closure, helping individuals to come to terms with their grief and to begin the slow process of healing. Beyond the memorials, these gatherings also served a crucial social function. They were a reminder of the strength and resilience of the community, offering moments of connection and solidarity amidst the ongoing recovery efforts. In these gatherings, stories of bravery and sacrifice were shared, reinforcing the bonds between survivors and helping to rebuild the trust that had been fractured during the war. The leaders encouraged these stories, understanding that they were not just about honoring the past, but also about providing inspiration and hope for the future. Through these narratives, the community was able to find meaning in their suffering and to draw strength from the examples set by those who had fought and fallen. The emotional support provided by the community and the structured efforts through the centers helped to foster a sense of closure for many individuals. Closure, however, did not mean forgetting. Rather, it meant integrating the experiences of loss and trauma into a new, post-conflict identity. The support systems in place encouraged people to remember, but also to look forward, to rebuild their lives with the knowledge that their grief was shared and that their pain was understood. This collective processing of emotions was crucial in preventing the festering of unresolved trauma, which could otherwise have impeded the community's ability to move forward. In time, the acts of remembrance and support began to transform the landscape of grief into one of resilience. The memorials and community gatherings became annual events, evolving from moments of mourning into celebrations of life and survival. These events marked not just the passage of time, but also the community's progress in healing. The support centers, initially established as places of immediate relief, continued to operate as community hubs, offering ongoing assistance and fostering a culture of openness and mental well-being. The leaders made sure that these resources remained accessible, understanding that the process of healing was long-term and required sustained attention. Ultimately, the combined efforts to address the emotional toll of the conflict were integral to the overall recovery of the society. By acknowledging the deep psychological wounds left by the war and actively working to heal them, the leaders ensured that the rebuilding process was holistic. The physical reconstruction of homes and infrastructure was paralleled by the emotional reconstruction of lives, ensuring that the community could emerge from the shadows of conflict not just intact, but stronger. These efforts to heal the emotional scars of war created a foundation for a more resilient and united society, where the lessons of the past were honored and where the people could look to the future with renewed hope and determination. As the months turned into years, the once devastated landscape began to show signs of transformation. The remnants of war, charred ruins, barren fields, and empty streets, gradually gave way to the vibrant colors of renewal. Where the rubble of destroyed homes once lay, new structures began to rise. These rebuilt homes, though modest, were symbols of hope and resilience, each one a testament to the unwavering determination of the people to reclaim their lives. The process was slow and arduous, with each brick laid and each wall erected representing the collective will to move forward. As the construction progressed, the towns that had been reduced to ashes started to resemble their former selves, though now marked with the strength of survival. The fields, once scorched and abandoned, began to bloom again, bringing life back to the countryside. Farmers returned to the land, working tirelessly to restore the soil and plant new crops. It was a grueling task, made more difficult by the memories of conflict that still lingered in the air. Yet, as the seasons passed, the fields began to flourish once more, with rows of crops swaying in the wind as a sign of renewal. The sight of green fields stretching across the horizon became a source of pride for the people, a clear indication that life was returning to the land. The harvests, initially meager, gradually grew more abundant, feeding the towns and providing a sense of security that had been absent for so long. In the towns, the sounds of hammers and saws were eventually replaced by the lively buzz of everyday life. Markets reopened, filling the streets with the chatter of merchants and the bustle of shoppers. Stalls lined the main squares, offering goods that ranged from fresh produce to handmade crafts, a stark contrast to the desolation that had once gripped the region. The return of markets was not just an economic revival, it was a cultural one as well. The festivals that had been halted by the war slowly resumed, bringing joy and celebration back to the towns. These events, filled with music, dance, and laughter, became important milestones in the recovery process, reminding everyone of the community's resilience and capacity for joy even after the darkest times. The process of healing, however, was far from complete. While the physical scars of war were being addressed, the emotional wounds remained a persistent challenge. The memories of loss and trauma could not be erased as easily as the ruins of buildings. Yet, the progress made in rebuilding their homes and livelihoods provided a foundation upon which the people could continue their journey of healing. Support networks, established in the immediate aftermath of the conflict, continued to operate, offering counseling and communal activities that fostered a sense of unity and understanding. These efforts were crucial in helping individuals and communities to process their grief and to find a way forward together. The kingdoms, though forever marked by the conflict, emerged stronger and more united than before. The shared experience of rebuilding had fostered a sense of solidarity among the people, breaking down many of the divisions that had once existed. The leaders, who had guided their kingdoms through war and recovery, were now focused on ensuring that the lessons learned from the conflict were not forgotten. They implemented policies that promoted collaboration between the different regions and factions, encouraging dialogue and cooperation to prevent future conflicts. The emphasis on unity and mutual support became a cornerstone of the new era, helping to create a more stable and cohesive society. The enduring spirit of resilience that had seen the people through the darkest of times became a defining characteristic of the kingdoms. It was reflected in the determination of the farmers to restore their fields, the resolve of the builders to reconstruct their towns, and the commitment of the leaders to foster peace and unity. This resilience was not just about survival. It was about the ability to adapt, to rebuild, and to thrive despite the challenges. It became a source of pride for the people, who took strength from their collective achievements and the knowledge that they had overcome adversity together. As the years passed, the kingdoms continued to rebuild, but now with a renewed sense of purpose. The lessons learned from the conflict were ingrained in the fabric of society, guiding the way forward. Education, diplomacy, and social welfare became priorities, ensuring that future generations would be better equipped to handle challenges and maintain peace. The memory of the war, though painful, served as a reminder of the cost of division and the value of unity. This collective memory, honored through monuments and annual commemorations, helped to bind the people together, creating a shared identity that was rooted in both resilience and hope. In the end, the transformation of the landscape was more than just a physical one. It was a reflection of the inner transformation that had taken place within the people and their kingdoms. The scars of war would never fully disappear, but they were now interwoven with signs of renewal and growth. The kingdoms had emerged from the ashes of conflict not just as survivors, but as stronger, more united communities, guided by the lessons of the past and the enduring spirit of resilience that would carry them into the future. Chapter 53: A Changing Dynamic. The sun cast a warm, golden light over the bustling city, illuminating the streets where life was beginning to flourish once more. In the aftermath of the conflict, Mara and Kale found themselves in positions of great responsibility, their roles having expanded and shifted in ways they had not anticipated. The victory they had fought so hard to achieve had brought with it a new era, not just for their kingdoms, but also for them personally. The clear lines that had once defined their duties were now blurred, merging their once separate paths into a shared journey of leadership and growth. As they adjusted to these changes, both Mara and Kale sensed that their relationship was also evolving, influenced by the pressures and challenges of their newfound roles. Mara, who had always been resolute and focused on her responsibilities, now found herself having to consider Kale's perspective in her decisions. The weight of leadership had always been heavy, but now it was shared, requiring a balance of power and trust between them. She was no longer just a solitary figure making choices for her people. She was part of a partnership that demanded collaboration and compromise. This shift was both unsettling and invigorating, forcing her to reassess her approach to governance and her relationship with Kale. The dynamic between them was no longer simply one of allies in battle. It was now a complex interplay of equals navigating the intricacies of leadership together. Kale, too, was grappling with the changes in their relationship. His role, once clearly defined within the context of the conflict, had expanded to include the responsibilities of peacetime governance. This transition required a new set of skills and a different mindset, one that focused on rebuilding and maintaining stability rather than just surviving. As he adapted to these new demands, he found himself relying more on Mara's wisdom and experience, recognizing that their strength lay in their ability to work together. The bond they had forged in the heat of battle was now being tested in the quieter, yet equally challenging, arena of political and social reconstruction. This shift deepened their connection, as they leaned on each other in ways they hadn't before. The evolving dynamic between Mara and Kale was not without its tensions. As they navigated their new roles, there were moments of disagreement and conflict, born from the stress of their responsibilities and the different perspectives they brought to the table. However, these challenges also offered opportunities for growth. Each conflict, while difficult, pushed them to communicate more openly and to understand each other more deeply. The shared goal of rebuilding their kingdoms required them to set aside their individual egos and to focus on the greater good, strengthening their partnership in the process. The process was not always smooth, but it was essential in solidifying the trust and respect that underpinned their relationship. Over time, as they continued to adapt to their new roles, Mara and Kale found that their relationship had transformed into something stronger and more resilient. The shared experiences of both conflict and peace had forged a bond that was not easily shaken. The challenges they faced together, whether in battle or in governance, had revealed the depth of their commitment to each other and to their kingdoms. Their partnership, once rooted in necessity and circumstance, had grown into a true alliance, characterized by mutual respect, trust, and an understanding that their fates were inextricably linked. As the sun set on the bustling city, casting long shadows over the streets, Mara and Kale stood together, ready to face whatever the future might bring, united by the journey they had undertaken and the relationship they had built along the way. Mara, now a central figure in the kingdom's reconstruction, embraced her leadership role with a determination that both inspired and challenged those around her. She had become the cornerstone of the recovery efforts, her presence commanding respect and her decisions shaping the future of her people. Each day brought a new set of challenges: strategic meetings to coordinate the rebuilding, diplomatic negotiations to secure alliances, and countless hours dedicated to overseeing every aspect of the kingdom's restoration. The sheer weight of these responsibilities was evident in the deep lines of concentration that had formed on her brow, and in the subtle signs of exhaustion that occasionally shadowed her eyes. Yet Mara carried on, driven by a fierce commitment to her kingdom and a sense of duty that left little room for rest. Beneath Mara's resolute exterior, however, was a growing awareness that her role required more than just the execution of power and authority. The demands of leadership had always been great, but the aftermath of the conflict had revealed a deeper, more complex challenge, guiding her people not just through the physical rebuilding of their lands, but through the emotional and societal healing that was just as vital. This realization began to change her approach to governance. While her strategies remained sharp and her decisions decisive, There was now a layer of empathy in her leadership that had not been as pronounced before. Mara understood that strength alone would not be enough to lead her kingdom into a new era. Compassion and understanding were equally essential. As she navigated the intricacies of her role, Mara found herself increasingly focused on the human element of reconstruction. Her interactions with her people became more personal, as she took the time to listen to their stories, their fears, and their hopes for the future. These moments, though brief, had a profound impact on her, deepening her connection to those she served. It was in these encounters that Mara began to see the true nature of her leadership, not as a distant ruler but as a shepherd guiding her flock through a time of unprecedented change. Her resolve to rebuild the kingdom was now intertwined with a genuine desire to heal the wounds of war, fostering a sense of community and shared purpose among her people. The challenges Mara faced were immense, but they also revealed her capacity to adapt and grow as a leader. The strategic mind that had served her so well in battle was now applied to the more nuanced task of rebuilding a society. She became adept at balancing the demands of governance with the need for emotional support, creating policies that were both practical and compassionate. This dual approach began to bear fruit, as the kingdom slowly but surely began to recover. The people, once weary and uncertain, began to take comfort in Mara's leadership, seeing in her not just a ruler, but a leader who truly understood the complexities of their struggle. As Mara continued to lead her people through the reconstruction, the kingdom began to reflect the changes within her. The rebuilt towns and restored farmlands were symbols of physical recovery, but the renewed sense of hope and unity among the people was a testament to the deeper transformation she had helped to bring about. The path forward was still fraught with challenges, but Mara had grown into her role, embodying the balance of strength and compassion that her people needed. Her leadership was no longer just about rebuilding a kingdom. It was about forging a future where resilience and empathy would guide them through whatever trials lay ahead. Kale, in contrast to Mara's prominent role in the rebuilding process, had found his place as a crucial advisor and supporter in the new era of peace. The transition from a fierce warrior to a strategic thinker marked a significant shift in his career and responsibilities. As he settled into his new role, Kale's primary focus became aiding Mara in navigating the intricate web of post-conflict diplomacy and administration. His sharp mind and extensive experience in strategy proved to be invaluable assets. However, the change from the immediate, decisive actions of the battlefield to the more abstract and prolonged deliberations of the council room introduced its own set of challenges. Adapting to the subtleties of political maneuvering was a difficult task for Kale. The clarity of action that once defined his role as a warrior was replaced by the complexities of negotiation and diplomacy. On the battlefield, decisions were straightforward, driven by immediate objectives and clear-cut goals. In contrast, the political landscape demanded a nuanced understanding of alliances, rivalries, and the intricate dance of compromise and persuasion. Kale often found himself longing for the directness of combat, where outcomes were determined by swift and decisive actions. This yearning highlighted the struggle he faced as he adapted to his new responsibilities. Despite the challenges, Kale's transition into his role as a strategic advisor was not without its successes. His insights into military strategy and his experience with high-stakes decisions brought a fresh perspective to the council discussions. He was instrumental in advising Mara on issues related to security, defense, and international relations, drawing from his extensive background in conflict management. His ability to think several steps ahead and anticipate potential outcomes was a crucial asset in navigating the complexities of peace building. However, the shift in focus from direct confrontation to indirect influence required him to develop new skills and adapt his approach. The dynamic between Kale and Mara, once defined by their shared experiences in battle, was evolving into a more intricate partnership. Their interactions were now characterized by the need for patience and mutual understanding. Where their previous collaboration had been driven by a common goal of victory, their current partnership demanded a more subtle alignment of their respective strengths and strategies. This evolution required both of them to adjust their expectations and to communicate more effectively about their visions and approaches. The process of aligning their new roles and working together in this transformed capacity was both challenging and enriching. As Cale continued to navigate his new role, he began to appreciate the value of the skills he was developing. The patience required for political negotiations and the understanding needed for effective diplomacy were gradually becoming integral parts of his leadership. The challenges he faced served as opportunities for growth, pushing him to refine his abilities and adapt to the demands of peace. The dynamic that had once been marked by the immediacy of battle was now defined by a more deliberate and collaborative approach. In this evolving partnership, Cale and Mara were learning to balance their respective strengths, creating a more cohesive and effective leadership team for their kingdom's future. As Mara and Cale adjusted to their new responsibilities, the nature of their interactions evolved significantly. Gone were the days when their conversations revolved around immediate tactical decisions and the urgency of shared combat objectives. Instead, their discussions now delved into broader visions and strategic planning for the future of their kingdoms. The focus had shifted from immediate survival to long-term stability and growth, requiring them to address complex issues that extended beyond their previous experiences. This new focus demanded a different kind of dialogue, one that encompassed not just the logistics of their roles but also the overarching goals and philosophies guiding their decisions. The mutual respect that Mara and Cale had built through their shared experiences in battle was now being tested by the complexities of their new roles. While their respect for each other's capabilities remained strong, the nature of their responsibilities introduced new challenges to their relationship. They were no longer allies facing a common enemy, but partners navigating the intricate landscape of governance and diplomacy. This shift often brought to light different perspectives and priorities that had not been as apparent before. The issues they faced were more nuanced and required a level of cooperation and compromise that sometimes strained their previously straightforward dynamic. There were moments of tension as Mara and Cale grappled with their differing viewpoints and the demands of their new roles. These disagreements, while challenging, also provided valuable opportunities for growth. They were forced to confront and negotiate their differences, leading to a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives and needs. The process of working through these conflicts became a critical aspect of their development as leaders and partners. It was through these trials that they learned the importance of patience, open communication, and empathy in maintaining a strong and effective working relationship. As they navigated these evolving responsibilities, Mara and Cale found themselves developing more effective communication skills. The complexities of their roles necessitated a higher level of dialogue, where listening and understanding were as important as speaking and directing. They made a concerted effort to listen with empathy, acknowledging each other's viewpoints and concerns. This improved communication helped them to address issues more constructively and to find common ground, even when their perspectives initially seemed divergent. Their ability to engage in meaningful discussions became a cornerstone of their collaborative efforts. In the end, the challenges they faced in adapting to their new roles also forged a stronger partnership. The process of navigating differing perspectives and priorities allowed them to build a more resilient and nuanced relationship. Their experiences taught them the value of working through conflicts together, emerging with a deeper appreciation for each other's strengths and contributions. As they continued to develop their leadership, the evolving nature of their interactions became a testament to their growth and adaptability. Together, they embraced their roles not just as leaders but as partners in the ongoing journey of rebuilding and shaping the future of their kingdoms. The shift in Mara and Kale's dynamic was clearly mirrored in their personal interactions, reflecting the profound changes in their lives and responsibilities. The camaraderie that had initially defined their relationship, built in the heat of conflict and shaped by their shared battles, was evolving into something more nuanced. As they transitioned from wartime leaders to peacetime administrators, their bond was no longer solely anchored in the immediacy of combat, but was now being redefined by the demands of their new roles. This transition marked a significant change, where their relationship began to transform from one of fierce companionship to a more complex and layered connection. The camaraderie that had once united them in their fight against a common enemy began to give way to a deeper, more intricate relationship. Their interactions, once characterized by the urgency and intensity of battle, were now influenced by the subtleties and demands of leadership. This evolution was not merely a shift in context but also a deepening of their emotional and intellectual connection. The camaraderie forged in battle was now the foundation for a relationship that required them to navigate the complexities of governance and diplomacy, adding new dimensions to their bond. As they adjusted to their new roles, their interactions became more contemplative and introspective. The nature of their conversations shifted from tactical discussions and immediate concerns to more reflective dialogues about their shared vision and the future of their kingdoms. They found themselves delving into discussions that explored their personal philosophies, values, and long-term goals. These conversations, though sometimes challenging, allowed them to gain a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives and motivations, fostering a more profound emotional connection. Navigating this new terrain brought its own set of challenges and opportunities. The intertwining of their individual roles and responsibilities with their personal relationship created a dynamic that was both rewarding and complex. They were no longer just allies in a common cause but partners in a collaborative effort to shape their kingdom's future. This new landscape required them to balance their professional duties with their personal connection, leading to a deeper appreciation for the ways in which their lives and roles were interlinked. Their relationship, once defined by shared struggles, was now being shaped by their joint efforts to rebuild and lead. In embracing this evolving dynamic, Mara and Kale discovered that their personal connection was enriched by the depth of their shared experiences and the challenges they faced together. The journey from warriors to leaders had transformed their relationship, creating a bond that was as resilient as it was intricate. Their evolving interaction reflected the growth they had undergone as individuals and as partners. As they continued to navigate their new roles, they did so with a renewed understanding of each other, their connection a testament to the strength and adaptability they had developed through their shared journey. Despite the numerous challenges they faced, there was an undeniable sense of mutual growth and understanding emerging between Mara and Kale. The transformation from their roles as warriors to leaders in a time of peace had not been smooth, but it had fostered a deeper appreciation for each other's strengths and limitations. Both were coming to terms with the demands of their new responsibilities, learning to navigate the complexities of governance while still grappling with the personal adjustments required by their evolving roles. This period of transition, though fraught with difficulties, was proving to be a profound journey of personal and professional development for both of them. As Mara and Kale adapted to their new roles, they began to recognize that their shifting dynamic was not a source of division, but rather a natural reflection of their evolving journey together. The changes in their relationship, while sometimes challenging, were also indicative of their growth as individuals and as partners. They were learning to embrace the nuances of their new roles, finding strength in their shared experiences and the evolving nature of their partnership. This growing understanding allowed them to see the shifts in their dynamic as opportunities for deeper connection rather than obstacles to their collaboration. Their partnership was increasingly becoming a cornerstone of their efforts to rebuild and lead their kingdoms. The mutual support and respect they extended to each other were integral to their success in navigating the complexities of post-conflict leadership. By acknowledging and valuing each other's contributions, Mara and Cale were able to effectively combine their strengths, creating a balanced and dynamic leadership team. Their ability to work through the evolving nature of their relationship highlighted their commitment to each other and to the future of their kingdoms, reinforcing the importance of their partnership in the rebuilding process. The process of adaptation and support that Mara and Cale experienced together was a testament to their resilience and dedication. As they faced the challenges of their new roles, they relied on each other for guidance and encouragement. Their willingness to embrace change and to support each other through the transitions was a powerful demonstration of their commitment to their shared goals and to each other. This mutual support not only strengthened their partnership but also enhanced their effectiveness as leaders, enabling them to address the needs of their people with greater empathy and understanding. In reflecting on their journey, Mara and Cale recognized that their evolving dynamic was a crucial part of their growth as leaders and as partners. The challenges they faced together had forged a deeper connection between them, one built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. Their ability to adapt and thrive amidst change was a testament to their resilience and their unwavering commitment to both their personal relationship and their leadership roles. As they continued to navigate their responsibilities, they did so with a strengthened bond and a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face the future together. As the city began to flourish under Mara and Cale's leadership, their evolving dynamic became emblematic of the new era they were helping to shape. The transformation of their relationship from one defined by the immediacy and intensity of battle to a more complex and nuanced partnership mirrored the broader changes occurring within their kingdoms. This shift was not merely a personal evolution but also a reflection of the deeper, systemic transformation that was taking place as they moved from a period of conflict to one of reconstruction and growth. Their relationship had matured into something far more intricate and substantial than it had been during the heat of battle. The bond they had forged in the midst of conflict had laid a strong foundation, but it was through their joint efforts and leadership that it truly deepened and expanded. As they navigated the complexities of governance, their interactions became more reflective of their shared vision for the future. This new phase of their relationship was characterized by a mutual understanding and a collaborative spirit that was essential for addressing the multifaceted challenges they faced in their roles. Together, Mara and Cale confronted the demands of their new roles with a unified approach, demonstrating a commitment to both their personal and professional growth. Their partnership, now defined by a shared sense of purpose and a willingness to adapt, played a crucial role in guiding their kingdoms through the period of recovery and renewal. The way they worked together, balancing their strengths and compensating for each other's weaknesses, highlighted the strength of their bond and their capacity to lead effectively in this new era. Their evolving dynamic also underscored their readiness to embrace the future with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. The challenges they faced were met with a collaborative approach that emphasized both strategic thinking and emotional resilience. As they adapted to their new roles and responsibilities, they remained steadfast in their commitment to creating a prosperous and stable future for their people. This sense of purpose was reflected not only in their leadership but also in the way they supported and complemented each other. In the broader context of their thriving city and revitalized kingdoms, Mara and Cale's changing relationship stood as a powerful symbol of the progress they had made. Their journey from warriors to leaders had been marked by significant personal growth and mutual understanding. As they continued to shape the future, their partnership became a testament to the strength and adaptability required to overcome the challenges of transition. The unity they exemplified was a beacon of hope and an inspiration for their people, embodying the promise of a new era forged through resilience and collaboration.